Greetings, and welcome to the force that is helping fight against the Kaijus that ravage our world. In case you have been living under a rock, the year is 2096, and around 50 years ago, humanity discovered that souls can be used as an optimal fuel source. However, mysteriously soon after this, Kaiju started appearing that were able to manipulate soul energy. Now, of course, soul energy is a renewable energy source, the best one on Earth we ever had, which has obviously led to 80% of all energy on Earth being soul energy that we use. However, Kaiju are using it for much less benevolent reasons. There are two types of Kaiju. Adam Kaiju, which use soul energy to create new other Kaiju, and Eve Kaiju, those created by Adam Kaiju that use soul energy offensively. This first Kaiju we call the Scorched Kaiju, and it has been beaten multiple times, but it has mysteriously never died. They manipulate the souls of their kills to create new Kaiju, as all Adam Kaiju do, and some people believe that this Kaiju was the first ever Kaiju to exist, and its abilities as an Adam Kaiju created all others, though we have no idea. Luckily, we managed to gravely injure them in our last battle with them, scorching their skin, which revealed muscle and burnt flesh. However, this unfortunately changed its form, and the next time it reappeared, it gained the ability to breathe plumes of explosive fire, which our forces have so far been unable to defend against. This episode is actually a pretty odd one because, unlike other episodes where I clearly have a favourite drawing among them, I'm actually not sure what it would be for this episode. I guess I'd say this one, but I don't know, it's pretty close. I do like all the drawings in this episode. However, this was the one I was most excited to do. And when they originally had the idea to do Mascot characters as Kaiju, the story and lore was actually much different, but I think this is some of my favourite lore and stories that I've come up with in a while. And I really like this as a new Kaiju universe that I could build upon. And obviously, the idea of souls and stuff fits very well in Mascot horror franchises and stuff. And this one was the one I was most excited to do. I didn't pick Burn Trap particularly because I like it. If anything, I generally don't end up liking that much because it kind of ruins the lore. But I just thought it would be a cool design to turn into a Kaiju, and yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. A lot more detailed than my other drawings, and I mess around with the background and stuff, but I think it turns out pretty well. I gave it these massive shoulders, which is a bit hard to see because of a pose, which is probably the only thing I end up disliking about this piece. But apart from that, I really like it, and let's get into our next Kaiju. We're going to be talking about 3 Kaiju today, 2 of which will be Adam Kaiju, the Kaiju we talked about previously, and our next one, and this one being an Eve Kaiju, meaning it does not have the ability to create other Kaiju. And while Kaiju are more like ravaging beasts than sentient creatures, some of them do show a fair level of sentience, which, despite what you would guess from appearance, does include this beast. This beast was once, quote-unquote, allied with another group of Kaiju. We didn't fully understand it as our research into it was obviously limited, since we were more focused on trying to defeat the Kaiju. However, it seemed that these Kaiju wouldn't go after each other, as many Kaiju just seem to attack each other on sight, or even if another Kaiju's in the area, since they seem to be able to sense each other, possibly through soul energy, though again, we haven't been able to get that much research in. However, this group of Kaiju, even when they were in the same area, and they had been proven to go and attack Kaijus in similar situations, they didn't. And they also seem to attack cities very rarely together at times. Now, it's not super rare for 2 Kaijus to attack the same city, but most of the time, that ends in the Kaiju attacking each other, which never seemed to happen with this group of Kaiju. However, this Kaiju seems to have been kicked out, so to speak, by another mysterious Kaiju, another Eve Kaiju that's most notable for its very peculiar genetic makeup, with its body seeming to be made almost out of clay. And this very kaiju that once kicked this kaiju out of the group is a relentless hunter of this kaiju, which even when it has been moved to almost halfway across the world, the other odd clay kaiju still seems to be following it. Obviously, we can't put much research into this, as we have to be focused on fighting against the kaiju, but it's certainly an interesting dynamic for us to study, and it does suggest more intelligence in these creatures than we once thought. This kaiju was the last one I designed for this episode, but I do think it ends up turning out pretty well, and I try some new techniques with it. Mainly in the framing. A lot of the time when I do my drawings, I don't have things necessarily in the foreground, in the background very obviously. I obviously have backgrounds, but parts of the kaiju aren't really interacting with it. For this one, I wanted to have the tail nice up there in the foreground. I almost feel like I could have had it even closer to us, but I think how it is now, it turned out pretty well. And also, I wanted to try adding some textures onto this kaiju. Most of the time in my drawings, I don't end up adding textures, I just add shadows and lighting. But I was actually taking some notes from my recent Mice and Monsters videos, which is surprising because this is probably one of the most detailed kaiju I've ever drawn. And the MSM videos are working with a much less detailed art style, but in those I don't really shade the characters except when they're especially shiny, so I had lots of textures to make up for the negative space, and I really liked that and implemented it with this, adding some scales. I do think, however, the light coloured scales tend to not work that well. Maybe I should just stick to one colour in the future. The design itself, it's alright, I guess. It's pretty similar to the original, but I don't really have anything special to say about it. I changed the piano mouth to a sort of one of them whale mouths that filter feeds. It doesn't really make sense for the character, but I mean, it's a kaiju, it doesn't have to make sense. Anyway, I hope you like the finished result of this drawing. Let's move on to the final drawing in the episode. As said previously, this next kaiju is an Adam kaiju, and it actually seems to have a fair amount of insectoid features. It has a very insectoid head and eyes, and even a stinger on the end of its tail. And we don't know much about this kaiju, it seems to be very mysterious. And among Adam kaiju, it seems to be one of the less, productive kaiju. And it seems to have created the least Eve kaiju out of, well, possibly all of them, though we never know how many are actually out there. It manipulates soul energy to create new kaiju, obviously, as all of them do. However, it also seems to be able to, spawn from it these sort of smaller versions of itself, these insectoid creatures that appear close to it, but with smaller bodies, larger heads, wings, and multicolours. So while this kaiju was a very crimson colouring, these others are very small, and while we don't count this, it does use soul energy to do it. And as said, all kaiju use soul energy for what they do. Adam kaiju use it to create new kaiju. Eve kaiju, similar to the last one, use it to use special abilities, such as the last one, being able to use a hypersonic shriek. This kaiju is able to spawn these with the help of soul energy, and there has been much debate as to whether we count this as them creating new kaiju or not. However, we have decided to refrain from that, as it does in fact generate them within its own body, and using soul energy to enhance them, almost as if it is a biological hive of sorts. This kaiju, I think, is the best in the episode in terms of actually looking like a kaiju. And you also like what I did where I kind of showed it manipulating soul energy. I knew I wanted to do that for one of these kaiju, and since this one had the least special abilities, I thought I would do that. I did enjoy managing to put what are they called in the game? I forget what they're called, but those little multicolored things with the massive eyes interval. That wasn't planned, but I thought it would be a cool power to give it. And yeah, you can probably tell in this story, it doesn't actually take that much from the original story, but I didn't really know how to work that into a kaiju. Maybe in a sequel to this episode where I do a different Rainbow Friends character, I could figure that out. But that only happens if you all enjoy this episode, and I think this is the best one in the episode in terms of looking like a kaiju, as I said, because it kind of shows the scale. Especially my burn trap kaiju ended up looking kind of small, so I definitely need to work on that. Even if this doesn't look like the biggest, I still think it looks like the right size almost, and I really like the lighting added on it. Overall, I like all the ones in this episode, but this one, it's like, yeah, I like it. There's nothing really that sticks out to me, really. I like the insectoid design I went for it, because the burn trap one I made very humanoid. This one was the second one I wanted to change it up a bit, but yeah, it's probably my least favourite from the episode, but that's not to say I don't like it. I also had the textures on the back. And yeah, overall, like all the ones in this episode, I really like the universe, especially that I built out for these kaiju things. I almost feel like, since it's set in the future, I could have worked that in more, like infrastructure, how it plays off of soul energy, but that would be kind of in a world-building episode almost, which if you all want to see, I mean, I'll do it. I'm willing to work with this world again. I really enjoyed it. However, the drawing's coming to a close, so let's have a look at the finished result.